look at myself as unique, in the sense that I am the only one involved in getting this information out. There are others, many others, both physical and non-physical, who are assisting in this transformative process. The Wingmakers refer to it in their philosophy papers as the two portals.
I've only heard you speak of the Grand Portal. I assume it's one of the two portals.
Yes. The Grand Portal will be released in the Wingmakers literature as the irrefutable scientific discovery of the human soul, and in a way, that's true, but it's not the whole story. The two portals are defined as the crack and the wall demolition.
I hope you plan to explain that.
Yes, well, the crack is the first portal. It is the portal between worlds. It is a human, and that's about all I know at this time.
A human who does what?
It can step between worlds. I realize that thousands of people, even famous people, have claimed to have visited heaven, but according to the writings of the Wingmakers, it is not true. They have wandered into the astral world, which has many dimensions, but this astral world is part of the creation of Anu, in terms of our programming. Our true dimensional existence is not of Anu's creation or formulas. The human portal will be a communication portal between our origins, as a race of infinite beings, and this world, the hologram of deception.
What about the wall demolition, as you called it?
The Grand Portal is the wall demolition. That's when the wall comes down, through the efforts of all beings that are undergoing the sovereign integral process. And this makes it possible for all human beings to step forward into their infinite self or life essence.
So the sequence is first the human portal and then the Grand Portal? And from a timing perspective, what can you say about it?
The human portal anchors the inception point on Earth for the Grand Portal. It will come in about 10 years. The Grand Portal, about 70 years after that. Those are the rough time frames I've been given, but always with a stipulation that these times can shift and change.
What does science say about this?
Science in terms of what?
I mean the whole notion of the universe being a hologram or illusion created inside our head.
Science is not able to explain it. The counterlogical nature of the universe, in terms of quantum behavior, is impossible to explain. Some scientists have relented to explaining it all away as hidden variables. But frankly, what the Wingmakers have explained is that we're creating the universe through the human interface Anu provided us, by reinterpreting sound vibrations through our five senses.
But it doesn't make sense. How can I see the moon, and the 2-year-old can see it exactly the same way? How can it be the same?
No. This is what the unconscious mind provides the human 2.0 interface. It gathers the interpretation of the sound vibration of the moon, based on billions and billions of sightings throughout time. These evolve and change based on environmental conditions, but generally the notion that the moon is silver, and generally the size that it is stored and shared in the DNA and unconscious mind system, and reinforced by culture, family, and education. This is the universal collective field. It's a field effect that transfers information through vibratory fields that interconnect humans.
Maybe it'll just take me a while to get that one. I hear your explanation. It just doesn't make sense to me. Let me change the topic slightly. If everyone's life is pre-programmed, why are you and I talking about this? I mean, why are we able to discuss this? Why would Marduk's program allow us to even glimpse this information?
It's a good question. Maybe the best way to understand this is to consider a thought experiment. Imagine that our universe is a bubble. It was created by a group of entities that used deception against their equals, who had never experienced such an evil vision of separation, and therefore couldn't conceive of a defense against it. This bubble universe seemed complete and always expanding. In many ways, it was an ideal platform for life, and yet only one sentient life form seemed to exist, on one tiny planet inside this vast, near infinite universe. Inside this same bubble, there were vibratory dimensions that became known in religious circles as heaven and hell, and in spiritual and psychic circles as the etheric and astral planes. These planes exist inside the bubble, but are not visible with the human interface or five senses. We'll call this Bubble 1. External to Bubble 1, imagine there is another universe or dimension of existence. It is vast and encompasses Bubble 1 wholly. Within the second, larger bubble is the dimension from which our life essence originated prior to its insertion into Bubble 1. Now, beings in Bubble 2 can enter Bubble 1 and experience it fully. However, if they get too close to the populated planet called Earth and stay too long, they will manifest and not be able to return to Bubble 2. Earth is the focal point in Bubble 1. The entities, who fancy themselves as gods, create more bubbles. They can trap other races in the same paradigm of deception and cast beings from Bubble 2 to new bubbles that are similar to Bubble 1. These entities essentially plan to take over Bubble 2 for themselves, while making their equals, who formerly shared Bubble 2, enslaved worshippers who look to the rulers of Bubble 2 as their gods. Meanwhile, there is a larger bubble that surrounds Bubble 2. We'll call it Bubble 3. Are you with me?
I think so.
Good. So Bubble 3 encompasses Bubble 2 and all of the smaller bubbles related to Bubble 1. There are beings in Bubble 3 that are aware of the deception perpetrated on the bubbles and the beings within them, but infinite beings are patient and curious. They wanted to see what the separation construct would create. In dimensions that had only known oneness and equality, the concept of division in material form was interesting.
But all the human misery, just to run an experiment?
Remember, the human machine is not real. It's the equivalent of a spacesuit with artificial intelligence and a sense and response sensory system. The astronaut, us, is infinite. It cannot be killed, or hurt, or destroyed. While the experimentation looks miserable from a human perspective, it is vibrant with learning on many other levels, one of which is to build the awareness in all beings of never allowing this deception to occur again. The unconscious mind system of the human being exists in a similar, but significantly more advanced modus operandi, in the interdimensional beings that can interoperate between the three bubbles. It is what allows the equality and oneness to be maintained in vast worlds of space-time and quantum space-time. Now, within this thought experiment, you can see that the dimensions of space-time are more dimensional than one universe. That entities exist in these various bubbles, experimenting with their creation. Sometimes in this experimentation, they decide to enslave through the constructs of separation and deception. This occurs with issues that human beings can relate to, like scarcity, preservation of a race, unintended consequences of decisions, service to self instead of service to truth. All of these elements were in the behavioral equations of Anu and his Sumerian accomplices. At some point, the lessons are learned. The entire experiment solidifies and hardens to such a degree that it cannot really compress anymore. Its value rapidly diminishes from that point. When this happens, beings will intervene. In our case, we intervened in the form of humanity returning to warn of this reality, hence the Wingmaker's intervention. As for why we are talking, it's simple. Marduk is not the only one who can program.
And what does that mean?
In today's world, we have programmers who can write code that take the user of that code from one experience to the next. It moves them from point A to point B. Programming is an aspect of time. It's a directional process. You're aware of hackers. They come in all sizes. Earlier this year, a 15-year-old kid hacked into the U.S. Air Force. Even Microsoft is finding it impossible to protect its NT operating system. The hacker mindset is again a manifestation of separation. It is a polarity, a mind game of swords, complete with ego and sometimes greed. Mostly, it's a reminder that whatever's a fortress remains vulnerable. The program that Marduk created is similar in concept to our software programming, but infinitely more complex and advanced. However, as any hacker will tell you, anything can be hacked with the right technology and skill. Our programs have been hacked. We've been altered. We're not connected in the same way to the grid lines that rule this hologram that I called Bubble 1 a little earlier.
Who did the hacking?
I can give you a name. I don't know. I've been told that there are many resources that are being used to create a crack in the wall, and then, from the inside, that's us, humanity, we'll push the wall down collectively and walk out of this prison. We are part of the crack.
I don't remember volunteering.
For what it's worth, neither do I.
Okay. I'm going to shift the conversation a bit. In my notes on Saturday you said the following, that the Wingmakers claim that the three-dimensional five-sensory domain that humans have adjusted to is the reason we are only using a fractional portion of our intelligence. They claim that the time capsule would be the bridge from the three-dimensional five-sensory domain to the multidimensional seven-sensory domain. How does that relate to tonight's conversation? And what exactly is the time capsule?
The time capsule is the content of the Wingmakers project. It's called the time capsule because it's a designed intervention to shift time. It's called the capsule because it is a delivery system of information that is designed to assist people to unlock from their grid lines their pre-programmed life path, where they were essentially a human robot marching through their life path as they were programmed to do. Until the Wingmakers disclose this aspect of their intervention, they can't disclose the real meaning behind their words. Again, they cloak their words in the accepted standards of this world's rules relative to the New Age, New World Order, spirituality, religion, philosophy, etc. This gave them an accepted anonymity. After all, it was all presented as a myth. There's nothing in a myth that could cause you to censor or strike back. They tested the explicitness of the language, and decided to place some of the activational elements in other formats like art, poetry, and music. In other words, when they couldn't state something explicitly, because of retaliatory concerns, they would encode it into the art.
But you've asked me to hold it back, this interview. What if it never gets released?
Then it wasn't necessary.
But then that would make the rest of the materials less than true, wouldn't it?
I would say it would make them less direct or explicit, but to your point, yes, I would agree that the truth is diminished without the framework of this disclosure.
Who are these materials for? I mean, I can tell you right now that when you were describing the first 4 interviews, I could count on one hand how many people I know who would listen to this perspective with an open mind. Most of my friends and family, I wouldn't even mention it. But with this interview, I don't think anyone I know would be open to it. I can't think of one, to be honest.
I understand. The number of people who show up to look through the crack in the wall will be very small. In terms of the whole population, a tiny fraction. But the real definition of the grand portal is that enough people will look through that crack and recognize there is more, much more to reality's existence, and they will work collectively to push down the wall. When the wall falls, that will be when the infinite beings inside step out and operate the human instrument, not as a separate thing, not as a vessel or something they wear as a uniform, but they will operate inside the human body, free of the interface and functional implants.
You mean they won't ascend into bubble number 2 or 3?
They will stay right here, Earth. But they will stay here, in the body, as infinite beings, not enslaved shells of themselves.
You said there were other beings involved in this intervention. Can you disclose them?
I'd prefer not to say anything other than to mention that it will be disclosed soon. This whole enslavement of humanity is like the 6 blind men touching the elephant. Many people are feeling parts of the elephant and describing the part they are touching, but with blindfolds on, it is very hard to describe the whole deception.
Are these blind men humans?
Yes, of course. They see parts of this enslavement and they know something is happening. Something isn't right. You can have godlike beings walking around the earth coincident with murder, rape, child abuse, and war, and they don't feel the separation and deception. Something is terribly wrong. Why are we letting this happen? According to the Wingmakers, there are people who are incarnated now who would be the equivalent of outliers. Are you familiar with this term?
No.
The term is typically used in statistics. Think of it like an anomaly. A person has what is called a transient malfunction to their interface, but in this malfunction, they are able to see through the crack. It might only last a second or 2, but they glimpse what is behind the walls. And again, I'm not talking about the astral plane. That's just a more rarefied plane of the hologram of deception. People with these transient malfunctions often end up being diagnosed autistic, or in extreme cases, are considered schizophrenic, but because the malfunction is transient, they slowly merge back into the human hologram and lack the contextual meaning of what they saw anyway. They learn to forget. The program draws them back in. But before they forget, before they return to normal beliefs, before they are drugged or quarantined, they share their experience to the unconscious mind. And this begins to express itself through culture. It'll come out in movies, books, theater, art, poetry, and many of these expressions will help to feed the unconscious mind and open it up to the possibility that the scale of our prison encompasses even the light, even science, even angels, even God.
Do we wear a target on ourselves when this gets released? I mean, will Anu decide to take us down if this goes out?
Believe me, I've probed on that issue. There's risk involved. How much? I don't know. The Wingmakers explain that the creators of this plan have resigned themselves to the intervention, but that their equivalents here on Earth are not as excited by those prospects. It'll work its way out, but it'll take some time.
What happens between now and the Grand Portal when the wall gets pushed down?
All I can tell you is that the triad of power will continue to consolidate. The money system will continue to spiral away from the many into the hands of the few. This was part of the original programming.
Relating to the return of Anu?
Yes. Manu would step in and solve the world's problems and be anointed. Manu would use the centralization of the money system to integrate technology into biologic systems, so they would be able to have infinite existence in Bubble 1, Earth. That way, Manu reasoned he could be God in this world forever. But as I said, this plan was not perfect in the sense of its infinitude. Manu underestimated the beings in Bubble 3 and beyond.
Has it ever been tried before?
What?
This